Hello everybody, and welcome to week 2 of English as a Medium of Instruction for Academics. I'd like to begin by saying thank you very, very much indeed for your commitment and your engagement on this course, when I know that a lot of us are living in very strange circumstances. So it's absolutely great that you're giving up so much of your time and committing yourself to the course. Thank you so much then for your participation and for the lovely comments that you've made. Rob and I really treasure some of the things that you've said, so thank you very sincerely for them. And congratulations for getting to the end of week 2. That's amazing. Well done everybody. What I'm going to do today is talk about 2 points in a little bit of detail, and then I'll finish off with 1 or 2 comments that will take us into week 3. Now, somebody asked me, what's the difference between good lecturing and good EMI lecturing? And I said, well, in a way there isn't a difference because good practice is good practice. But what it is that when we're teaching, lecturing in an EMI context, we're paying greater attention to some of the features of our context. We're paying greater attention to those than we might do in a more general standard, I don't know what to call it, lecture. So we're taking into account features such as the language that we use, the cultural references, and so on and so forth. So good practice is good practice, and then you highlight the specific features of your context in order to make it pertinent to your particular audience. I think that's what I'm trying to say. So when you recommended those videos of recordings that we can find online, TED Talks and so on, you then highlighted some of these good features. And if you were to go back to the comments that you've made, you could pick out and make a list of those features that we should be aiming for when we're lecturing, and lecturing in particular in the EMI context. And this then actually provides us with a basis on which we can base training, teacher training, if we're going to help our colleagues to teach and to lecture confidently in an EMI context. But then there's something else, and 1 or 2 of you have picked this out. As well as going through the list of technicalities, the good things to do, on top of that, there are things such as passion for the subject, that enjoyment of your subject, that you really want to transmit that to your students so that the learners can perhaps pick up some of the enjoyment that you have with your subject. And that love of the subject, you know, and the passion that it therefore creates in you, the lecturer, that's something that can't easily be taught. That I think has to come with time and commitment to the subject matter and to the enjoyment of conveying that to learners. That love of transmitting the knowledge that you have, that you find so empowering, and so that gets you so passionate about it. And then I think we have just 1 or 2 people who are like stars. They have that charisma, and you know, most of us don't have that charisma, but you know, it's lovely to see it in others if we can have the privilege of watching somebody who really does have that charisma. So one of the things that just occurred to me then is how much I would love to see some of you teaching. I get a really good impression of your characters and how you might be in the classroom through your comments, but I'd love there to be a way that we could, you know, see you teaching. Hey, maybe that will happen one day for us, I don't know. anyway, the second thing that I wanted to mention, it's to do with the section on the voice. Once again, something that really interests me and is something that we can talk about either in the context in general of lecturing and teaching in the classroom, or we can talk about our journey, our EMI journey, when perhaps there are new challenges for us. And one of those challenges is to do with our voice when we may be perhaps anxious, nervous, feeling stressed, and so on, to do with the different aspects of the EMI context. And so this may come through in our voice. Now, I want you to remember that when we're speaking, this is going to sound really silly, but it's a physical activity, isn't it? We're just using this vocal apparatus to make the sounds of the language. Now then, if we're tense, if we're anxious, if we're worried, then our body can tense up and this vocal apparatus tenses up as well. So that means that our voice can sound a little bit strained. We might not have the degree of variety in the intonation of our voice that might be interesting to listen to. So some of you talked about voices that are a little bit monotonous, and and I wonder, is that to do with some feature of another language, perhaps the mother language of the person who's speaking? Is that an influence? Or is it to do with anxiety and the sort of straining that we can feel sometimes? So what I would advise you to do, and in any context really, is to try and relax physically. Relax your shoulders, your head, do some movements, with the head to really loosen up the muscles. I know I'm probably looking a little bit of an idiot at the moment, but it doesn't matter at all. The vocal apparatus, the neck, the shoulders, and then you're going to say to me, how do you exercise the vocal apparatus? Well, I'm going to put my hand in front of my face because I think I'm really going to look stupid for this little tip that I'm going to give you. And I was given this tip by a drama coach, I think it was many years ago. You recite, well, in English it's a nursery rhyme called Jack and Jill Went Up the Hill, but I don't think it really matters what you say. And you actually stick your tongue out at the same time and try and speak. And what it does actually exercise some of these muscles here. So I'm not going to do all of it for you, and I'm certainly going to put my hand in front of my face, but it's with your tongue stuck out. Oh, it's horrible to do, but what it does do is stretch some of the muscles here, and you can find that your articulation becomes a little bit easier. So whatever you can do to relax this part of your body, do it. And some of you may even be familiar with Amy Cuddy, who gave a very famous TED talk some years ago. It was at the time one of the top 10 TED talks. And she talks about power poses and similar physical activities that help you mentally to gain confidence. So I'm going to leave you with a little bit of homework to do, and that is, how can you relax this part of your body, if not your own body, the whole of your body, in order to perform to the best of your ability in the classroom. So here we're not talking about intellectual capabilities, we're talking about the physicality of teaching. And we'll come on to that in week 3, actually, because we'll be talking about various things to do with body language. So posture and so on, all of these factors are really important in being confident. Amy Cuddy, TED Talk, fake it till you make it was her key phrase. Look it up if you're in need of a bit of confidence. And you might like to make the comparison with, say, an athlete, a sports person, needing to warm up before participating in a major event. We have to do that with our voices. Okay, just one or two little points. Welcome to the people who are still joining us. We had people joining us yesterday. So to those people, don't feel that because you're a late joiner that you can't participate. You can, because after the 4 weeks of this course, it is still open for a further 2 weeks, during which Rob and I will be commenting on what you say. So although there won't be this weekly feedback, we will still be there to answer questions and so on, but not in the form of a recording. Sometimes we pin a post. That means we take it to the top of a given section. And this means we feel that there's something interesting in it. Maybe it's controversial what the person has said, so we'd like you to look at it. Maybe the person neatly summarizes some of the things that we're saying. Or maybe it's just an interesting post and other people are reacting to it. So you may have questions for us for week 3, in which case I'd like you to go to week 3 I've written it down, step 17, which is where the video for next week will appear. All right, so if you can put any questions in that step before we record it next Friday morning. Yes, because it is Friday the 29th of May as we're recording today for week 2. So before next Friday, so that we can look at the questions and then try and answer them for you. So that's it from me. Have a good week with us. Stay safe. That's the most important thing. Look after yourselves, and we'll see you next week. Bye-bye.
Hello, everybody, and thank you, Mary, for your consistently wise insights. That just reminded me, by the way, that the advice I received on voice, my problem was I used to get very nervous when speaking to a large audience because, strangely, I was afraid that they would notice I was nervous, which made me more nervous. And somebody told me to just run my tongue around the outside of my teeth, front and bottom, repeatedly. And I think that worked really well for me to, I guess it moisturizes the mouth, it loosens your articulators. And I think it's psychological because I don't have to do it anymore because I don't get nervous anymore. Because I don't sound nervous anymore. So I turned a vicious cycle into a virtuous cycle. But anyway, that's some advice I was given. You can try it and see if it works for you. I just wanted to add a couple of points to what Mary said. One is particularly in support of the point about how we evaluate lectures in English, through English. And I think the framework is an interesting point that Mary made, that we have different ways of valuing things. And I just wanted to add that the student's view is often different from the way that we might evaluate things as educators. So we might look for the structure, look for how we think a presentation should be performed and things like this. I think the students probably take a much more holistic view and would say, they sound passionate, they sound interested in their subject. The content is interesting, the content is engaging for me. And then all the talk about structuring, signposting and things like that probably just go into one category of do I understand the purpose and do I understand the content? So I think actually it's useful to look at the different ways, and this is the complexity of teaching. It's the fact that we can be successful in different ways. It's not language plus personality plus content equals the perfect lecture. It's a mixture of these things, and different things work for different people. But I think it's very interesting to think about this through the student's eyes and recognize that we have a bias within our training and within our own lesson designs that make us notice things at a more micro level than students would notice them. But thank you. The insights were really interesting in how you commented on them, as Mary pointed out. I'd just like to add a quick observation about equality and equity. I've noticed this week there are some really interesting points. I noticed Dennis had an example of mimicking native speaker speech and then being mocked by his audience because perhaps that wasn't the identity or wasn't the projection that they were expecting, and then he was attacked viciously by his audience. And I did comment and say, in education we often have very critical people who are not afraid of pointing out our weaknesses, but it does link to this idea of native speakerism, of the different values we place on language within educational contexts. And people use this for their advantage, and it can disadvantage people, which is why we really prioritize this, because the adoption of English medium education in universities is highly problematic if it disadvantages good educators and good communicators because they don't speak in the way that is valued by the institution. And likewise, if people, not just native speakers, but if people can use aspects of language to their advantage, for example, which accent they can mimic, which institution they studied at in the past, that's another thing that exists in a lot of English medium contexts. Lots of the lecturers have studied in top English as a first language countries, which is potentially a form of discrimination. So they can use that for marketing. Our lecturers are from universities from Britain, America, Australia. But there might be very good communicators from other places who are not accessing English medium institutions or English medium programs. And that might be affecting their career progression and silencing the voice of lots of researchers and academics who don't get the opportunity to engage in the international university, or at least in the same way as others. So I wanted to really emphasize that. And this is why it's so important for our course that you bring your insights from your own experience, because we get to see the themes that we're mentioning through your own eyes and your own experiences. And I'm really interested in hearing these stories. So thank you very much for everything you've brought, and I hope you continue. As Mary said, please do post comments or questions in the video update for next week, as we're very happy we can't cover everything, and if there's anything we're not covering and could do, we'd be very happy to do so. So thank you very much again, and I'm having a great time reading through your comments, and I hope you are enjoying the course, and I'll see you in week 3. Thank you very much.